It's very similar to an audio game like Swamp or A Hero's Call, or we kind of combine the elements of these games in this interface.
Please welcome Brian Biggs and Christopher Toth.
I'm pretty proud of what we're building here. Not only is it very interesting as a blind person, but as a programmer, it's really cool.
People who have become blind later in life are advantageously blind, and they have said, I miss this. I miss being able to get this, quote, glancability, quote, of a map.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. Today, returning to the studio is Brandon Biggs. He's an engineer from Smith-Kettlewell Eye Research Institute and their applications designer, Christopher Toth. Brandon, welcome back to Blind Abilities.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the Blind Abilities and sharing with our listeners.
Thanks for having me.
And Christopher, thanks for coming on and for sharing what you've been working on.
Thank you very much.
So, Brandon, why don't you give us a little brief introduction to Audiom?
Yeah, so Audiom is basically a way for blind people to use maps, digital maps, online on any device, very similar to how sighted people would use Google Maps. And it's an actual map, so it's not like turn-by-turn directions or a table or alt text or some nearby address search tool. It's an actual map that can allow you to get the relationships between the objects. So you can answer questions like, what state bordering California has the highest number of COVID cases, or where you can see the different trends of COVID over the United States. We also can allow you to search for your address and view a travel map of any address in the world, basically.
I went to your website and checked out the videos, and I saw you had like a park that you're navigating through, and there's different labels. You could bring up a list of everything. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, it was our first map, and it's a playground in Palo Alto, California called the Magical Bridge. This map kind of can show what a defined space would look like. Say, for example, we wanted maybe an indoor space or a park or some place that is not necessarily on an OpenStreetMap or another type of map data repository. And so this was a custom map that we built, and it is of a real location, and the sounds that you hear in that space are of the real object. So we went around and sampled all the different place structures and stuff like that. So when you walk over the bridge, the footsteps that you hear as you're walking over the bridge are actually from the bridge there, and the looping sounds that you can hear the bridge from far away are actually of that bridge, and that's basically of all the different sounds in that playground. We have built a map viewer that can show enclosed spaces such as parks, buildings, and museums completely in audio. I'm currently in a playground, and I'm going to press a key to turn on the surround sounds. So we can hear to the left there are some bells ringing, and in front of us there is footsteps on a bridge. I'm going to press the arrow keys to move around. Up goes north, left goes to the west, and each time I press the key we move about 2 meters. So it's very similar to a step. So I'm going to press the up arrow.
Long ramp, 3215.
We hear the name of the object, which is long ramp, a short sound that's representative of the long ramp, which is kind of a step on wood, and then the coordinates that tell us that we're somewhere in the center of the map.
Ava's Bridge, 3216.
And we hit another object here called Ava's Bridge, and that's the sound of footsteps on a bridge that we hear in front of us. So I can move around all these different objects and explore the shape of that.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool, because I was listening to the musical harp, and it's like, wow, they came up with some good sounds, but these actually exist.
Yes.
Wow.
Our sound designer is Sam Tupy, and he is also a pretty well-known audio game developer, and so he's in the midst of redoing all our sounds. I also need to acknowledge that our funding came from the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research, and the National Institutes of Health.
Oh, that's great. I love those sounds. They were they were vibrant. They were good.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole bunch more new ones coming out fairly soon. I think Chris is in the midst of integrating them.
Yep, we should have them merged today, actually.
Yeah,
there we go.
Sounds will be evolving as you visit audiom.net.
And so navigating this, I saw you had north, south, east, west, and you just hit it, and you're actually moving right across into areas, and the other sounds are getting closer as you move towards them.
Yeah, so basically your little avatar moving around the space, and you're basically experiencing the geographic information in auditory virtual reality. And really all you need to use this is headphones, a keyboard, and a browser.
And you can virtually visit the park.
Yeah, and there's many other maps on there as well. So we also have our address search. So if you log into the website, there's a tutorial that you can go through, and there are several more maps. So the playground is the one that we kind of show up at the very front if you don't log in. If you log in, then you can see you have the address search, and you can search for any address in the world and get kind of a map of that location.
So I'm going to down arrow and enter my address.
Please select location to generate map. Combo box collapsed. Enter location.
All right, and I'm going to type in Taka's Grill, which is the name of a restaurant in Fort Bragg, California.
Enter location. Edit has autocomplete.
Hit down arrow and see if it finds it.
Enter location. Edit has autocomplete. Spelling error. Taka's Grill. Taka's Grill, North Main Street, Fort Bragg, California, USA.
That sounds like the place I want to go, so I'm going to hit enter.
Enter location. Edit has autocomplete. Application. Audio map ON button.
And now it's loaded the map, and I am going ahead and switch over to my screen reader.
Using your screen reader.
All right, now I can explore around this location. I'm going to press the up arrow to move north about 2 meters and left arrow to move left about 2 meters. And as I move around, we'll hear different sounds. So I'm going to press the left arrow.
Building 381, 508.
So we heard building and then some coordinates that tell us where in the map that we are currently. So basically, a lot of maps actually put points around buildings, and they just call them buildings, and there will be a point somewhere around here. So I'm going to press T to turn on surround sounds. And so we hear a bunch of roads around us, and we also hear to our left that there is the sound of a restaurant. So that's where I'm presuming Taka's Grill is actually to the left. But this is the building where Taka's Grill is, and so we can explore the shape of this building by moving around.
Building 300.
Pressing left arrow key.
Building. Blank space.
And so now I'm going to hit the down arrow key, and we can explore that building some more.
Building 374. Building 300.
All right, and now I'm going to go and find that point to make sure it really is Taka's Grill.
Blank space 300. Blank. Taka's Japanese Grill, Japanese restaurant at 250 North Main Street, 360.
Yep. That seems to be Taka's Grill. All right, so now I'm going to hit the left arrow key and go to some of these roads that are to our left.
Then we also have a COVID-19 map that's real-time, that gathers the latest statistics and can show case, death, and testing information across the 50 U.S. states and all the territories. And I'm going to hit R to hear which state has the highest total cases.
California.
R.
And I'm going to hit the right arrow key to hear the next statistic.
229,405.
So, Christopher, you've been working on this stuff.
Yeah, I've been the lead developer here for a little over a year and a half now.
How do you feel about this? You're both visually impaired, blind, so this must be something that has a great interest to you.
I'm pretty proud of what we're building here. Not only is it very interesting as a blind person, but it also is technically interesting. I've always got a new piece to work on or something new to figure out. It could be a weird browser bug one day or digging through the obscurity of the OpenStreetMap data format one day. So as a programmer, it's really cool. And then as you mentioned, as a blind person, it's obviously being able to create access is kind of one of the coolest things. And really what got me into software development in the first place, just that sort of something isn't working, but I have the skills, I could make it work.
That can-do attitude. I like that. So what is the use for this coming up in the near future?
We are still kind of in the beta stages of this project, so really early stages. The current maps that we have, I mentioned already. In the future, we're wanting to expand the number of maps that are out there. We want to get this into other applications. So if existing businesses or applications have maps in them, looking at a few big companies out there that have a lot of map applications, they could use Audiom right next to their visual map. And so we're building a software development kit that can allow these developers to basically have an audio map in their application. And so they can embed that right next to their visual map and have an accessible experience.
Mm-hmm.
It will require some data processing, but the potential is there. And that's our goal. We really want to have this map on everybody's app that has a visual map. So right now, what we want is for blind people to go on, give us feedback. There's a feedback button on the top of every single page, and we want people to sign up, give us feedback, and then we will be probably running some studies through the Smith-Kettlewell Eye Research Institute and the Georgia Institute of Technology, and people can sign up for those studies specifically. Yeah, this is something that we want to really change how maps are viewed by the blindness community. It's a huge industry. The geographic information system industry is like $22 billion or something like that. It's huge, huge, huge industry. And sighted people use maps every day. And blind people don't have access to any of that information unless they get a tactile map, which are super expensive and difficult to get. So we really want to democratize access to geographic information and make it available to blind people.
Here in Minnesota, we have the University of Minnesota campus, and it's one of the largest campuses as it's spread out. A map like that would really help new students familiarize themselves or experience it before they embark upon it, and then use it as they want to figure out more.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely have had that experience as well. So when I was in my undergrad, like first week that I was there, my parents left me at we basically walked the route from my house to the campus. And I was able to kind of make my way independently with their guidance, with them there. When they left, I managed to get to the building, but then on my way back, I almost needed to spend the night on campus and not at my house because I couldn't find my way back. But I finally found somebody who was there because it was in the middle of the summer, and so there was like nobody there. And so I asked them for directions and finally managed to get back to where I needed to be. But yeah, it was like a very simple thing where I took a wrong turn. So I don't have that overview in my mind, we call survey knowledge. Then I'm really dependent on the route and landmarks that I memorized during my short time with an orientation mobility specialist or other people who are showing me the route. So this really allows people to get an overview in their mind of a space, and that's what we really want. But it also allows people to do data analytics to see how climate change is affecting different parts of the planet. So that's another use case of maps. So maps are not just for navigation, but that is a really important part of it.
So Christopher, in that situation where you took the wrong turn and you're a developer working on that, how do you develop something that, okay, he's here, he wants to go here? Would you use cardinal directions, or is it 360 directions or GPS? How's that all work?
Primarily, we're focusing on an interface that gives you an overview of your route before you embark upon it. In the current state, it's not really something that I would use for real-time navigation. There are other tools that are more appropriate for that. But for kind of getting an overview of this is the relationships between two buildings you want to walk between, or kind of seeing like an overview, a bird's eye view of a campus or something like that. It's a much more useful tool for stuff like that.
I get it. Like I like to use a feature like look around, like having a coffee and I'm sitting there looking around the place, but that's bird's eye view, where this will actually let me know I'm going to walk down these streets. I'm going to find this here. I'm going to go that way. Yeah, I like that surveying, that overview. That makes sense.
It's very similar to a tactile map. It's just an audio. It's very similar to an audio game. So if you've ever played an audio game like Swamp or A Hero's Call or even Tactical Battle, we kind of combine the elements of these games in this interface. And so it's very, very similar to a tactile map. And one of the studies we want to do soon is to compare, the performance of Audiom with a tactile map, because that's kind of a question a lot of people have. And so our goal is to really get this to the level of what you can possibly get with a tactile map, at least as close as we can get. That's really the aim of what we're trying to do.
Well, that's great. Brandon, last time we talked, this was an idea. This was a concept and stuff. What led you to Christopher?
Well, Christopher is a very famous blind developer, and I sent him a message asking if he knew any programmers, blind programmers who might be interested in this. He said, I might be interested in this. I was like, oh, okay. So we had an interview, and that was basically how we started working together. Yeah, I'm very happy that he wanted to work with me on this. He's done a lot of really awesome apps for the blindness community, so this will just be one of them.
Wasn't there something called Chicken that you did, Christopher?
Chicken Nugget was a Twitter client. Yep.
Yeah. I remember. I heard your name come up and it was like that. So what was it like when he reached out and you said, this is something I'm interested in? How do you, with your imagination, your creativity and stuff, how do you limit it to what they want? And do you push the boundaries a little bit, like more and more?
Brandon's actually excellent to work with in terms of he's got a very good idea of what he wants. And because we both have a pretty good understanding of, I guess, the underlying domain and how we might interface with the data or whatever else, we both tend to be opinionated and we both tend to hammer it out until we've got something that we're both really happy with. And I really like the way that the product tends to evolve under that leadership.
That's great, because when I went in there and I started hearing these sounds, I first got acclimated. Then you said it's north and south, and I started hearing these sounds. Then as you're walking, hitting the up arrow is about 2 feet, a step, a stride. So I thought, well, do you have to count? And all of a sudden, you're going. I heard the walking bridge. I heard all these sounds. Actually, I was emerged. I was sitting there thinking I was there, and then all of a sudden you come up to it. And then exactly when you turned away from it, it wasn't there. That was nice. Open space. So I was picking it up. How about the coordinates on there when someone goes in there? Would those coordinates be turned into something at some other later time?
They're very arbitrary at the moment. They're just sort of our internal representation of the space. And I'd like to get something that's more related to the underlying metric or the underlying data model a little bit better. But right now, we kind of divide it up into squares and let you walk around there. Or voxels is a better term.
They're like meters or 2 meter steps. So some people really like to have that coordinate view, and they really use it to kind of orient themselves to where the map is. So in our system, the bottom left is 0, 0, and the top right is whatever the max levels of the map are. Mm-hmm. And so that's how you can kind of figure out where you are and hear coordinates of different objects as you're moving around. So, but it might change, as we kind of iterate on this idea. But right now, there are fairly simple coordinates. Bottom left is 0, 0.
Oh, I was thinking when I was doing it, I was thinking of You Sunk My Battleship coordinates, how that game used to be played.
Exactly like that.
Yeah, all the coordinates and stuff like that. Well, that's great. I like it. I like where you're going with the beta. I shouldn't be picking on the beta at all, but I like the concept that you guys are working on because it's a form of navigation that we don't get to experience. Like you said, there's maps used every second of the day, and yet we don't have access.
One of the things that I've been considering would be really cool to build with our system would be a generalized sort of browser extension that uses our system sort of like an SDK and detects a map on a page and automatically turns it into an Audiom map. Now, this isn't something that we've necessarily spec'd out or anything, but it's still one of my dreams is to be able to take just any arbitrary map. Oh, you go to a Craigslist page or Google Maps or whatever, and it just instantly detects that there's a map there and renders it for you in Audiom. And I think that will really show people man, there are so many maps out there that we're currently not seeing.
We're also working on another feature of Audiom too. So a lot of navigation applications use OpenStreetMap as their data source, and blind people have not been able to contribute to OpenStreetMap. And one of the tools that we're building is a way for blind people to actually create their own maps. And eventually what we would like is to allow people to contribute to a map database, creating points, polygons, and lines, which are the fundamental building blocks of any geographic map. And so we're in the midst of creating a tool to allow you to do that.
Hiking trails. I know a lot of people do that. I mean, you're only limited to the Earth, right?
We're really limited to the data, not necessarily the Earth. I mean,
once somebody puts the first Mars colony on OpenStreetMap, it'll just show up.
Yeah, it should, yeah. So we're really just limited to the data. So if we have some sort of data that we can use in there, then we just create a little processor for that data, put it into some way. So for example, every single feature in each map needs to have a name attribute so you know what it is. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just like some random object. And so we generate that name based off of different attributes in the data. OpenStreetMap, for example, doesn't necessarily have a name, so we have to add names to each one of those objects. And so that's what we're going to have to do in any data set that we run into.
Well, it's just like when you go to a mall, like we have the Mall of America here in Minnesota, 4 levels, but people walk up to these lit up maps that are on a pillar, and there's numbers on every one of those squares, which represents a building. Then to the side of it, there's a list over there. That number is this store, that store, whatever.
Yeah.
With that mapping, that's a map right there.
Yeah.
And that information, you could actually look in there and realize that this store is next to this store, or, actually familiarize yourself, do a survey of the mall before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they had some sort of QR code that can bring up an audio map. We're in the midst of also building a phone interface, a touchscreen interface for this. So eventually what we would like to have is you can just scan a QR code on your phone and then maybe explore where you're at in the concourse and figure out where the stores are that you want to go to. And maybe, eventually we could also integrate into other accessible kiosk tools that are out there. Because that'd be really cool.
Yeah, this is great stuff. Do you remember those? There used to be wooden puzzle pieces, but it was the states?
Yes, the states from APH. Yeah, the state puzzle map. Yeah.
But something that Audiom could do is someone could actually say, I'm in Minnesota and I'm going to go west. They'll go to North Dakota. They go that relationship. What state?
Yep.
And you could then hit the ocean, then go south down to California, and then across. That's a glance.
Yeah.
I like that because I miss that.
Longer than a glance, but yeah, it's definitely a glance, and it gives you those spatial relationships, and people are able to really see the shape of California. So when I ask people, "What's the shape of California?" they're able to say, it's kind of big at the top, and then it gets a little bit narrow at the bottom, and it kind of curves around to the right, as it goes down, and
like a
people
banana.
are able to really embody the shapes and the information that they're getting in audio.
Good stuff. Endless possibilities. I like that you took it away from navigation and went off into some other areas, some other fields and categories. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have other types of maps they want us to look at. So I've had people, come to me with really obscure map types that they want to see. And so if you have some types of maps that you want to see, Audiom, let me know, and we can work together on building those. That first Mars colony, right, Christopher?
Exactly.
How can people find out more and sign up?
Visit Audiom, AUDIOM.net.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes, too. Thanks for reaching out, Brandon. And Christopher, good job on doing this. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes.
Thanks.
Yeah, and if you have any ideas, comments on where you would like to use this, I really want to hear from you on what we can do to make this something that you would want to use, because maps are not being used by blind people enough, and we really need to be getting this information more.
Well, like I mentioned, the Mall of America, or, everyone says airports, but to tell you the truth, honestly, when I get to an airport, if I get assistance or someone tells me where to go, I use it, because I'm not going to be back at that airport.
That's not a location of when you would want to use Audiom. Audiom is really good for campuses, like we mentioned, where you really want to get an overview of what you need to do. Yeah. And maybe also, what are the ice cream places that are nearby my walking route, or other walking routes around my neighborhood. That's really important. Or, with the Coropleth map, which is the COVID statistics, we can put all kinds of data on that, like temperature data across the earth, or currents in the ocean, or political maps. People have wanted that. And so one thing that people can do if they really would like to have Audiom in a website that they interact with is, in the feedback, tell them to contact us and give our URL in there, and people can, the website admins can then contact us, and we can work with them to integrate Audiom into their website.
I really like what I think, Christopher, you said, a bird's eye view. I like that much better than when I said, look around. It's as the crow flies. It's in 1,200 feet that way, but that means 1,200 feet straight line, not around a building, not over, but. Yeah, I like a bird's eye view, because then you can figure out you have to follow the sidewalk at least, something of that nature.
Yeah, it allows you to really kind of connect in your mind what we call the gestalt, or the overview, or the layout of a space. And so you can kind of answer questions about which items are closer together, item A and B or item C and D. And that's not something that you can do with turn-by-turn directions.
Right. Good stuff. This is more interesting than I thought when we started. People need to learn about this.
Yeah, maps there's the whole fields of data visualization, cartography, fields that people can get degrees in and PhDs in and data analytics as well, they all have maps. And so maps are everywhere in our society. It's bigger than people think, and our society depends on them more than people might think. They're such a critical, important part of life for sighted people. I've talked to people who have become blind later in life, who are advantageously blind, and they have said, I miss this. I miss being able to get this, quote, glancability, quote, of a map and to figure out where I am and what's around me. And so with Audiom, they're able to get closer to that glancability than they've ever been able to get with any other digital experience. So that's great. That's what we aim to continue doing.
When you said it's more than navigation, there's so many different areas that you can use a map for. I just pictured this like flat matrix of a map. And then say you want, like you said, politics. All this data just floods the whole thing, and that makes a map once you transfer that data into information that they can relate to.
Well, hurricane maps too. And fire maps and service outage maps, even more detailed disease maps and hunger maps. There's just so many types of maps out there, and we're just really scratching the surface.
5G.
Yeah, 5G maps for sure. Absolutely. When I'm going on a trip, I really want to know where my phone's going to work and where it's not going to work. And in the current state of things, I can't get that information. I have to go individual addresses that I might be at. But that doesn't help me when I'm in a car and I want to know where on this trip am I not going to be connected to my network. And so there's really not a way to do that, especially since blind people, at least the blind people I've talked with, are not good at geography. And that's because they don't have maps. And so they're not looking at maps all the time. When we get one of the network providers wants to integrate Audiom into their website, you could get this information very easily. And we want to make this the accessible way of creating maps. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and the Americans with Disabilities Act method of equal equality when we're talking about maps. That's what we really aim to do, because tables are not, and nearby address searches and turn-by-turn directions and alt text, they are not equivalent. And we've got many studies that show this. I think one study showed that people were able to answer geographic questions with 20% accuracy on a table and 95% accuracy on a map interface. And so we want to re-replicate that study. But it just shows there's this huge gap in functionality between quote-unquote accessible items and the accessible solutions that are there now and Audiom. There's just a huge gap in the performance that could be there.
Christopher, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the Blind Abilities and telling us about Audiom and all that you guys have been working on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. And for more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities, and download the free Blind Abilities app from the App Store and Google Play Store. That's 2 words, Blind Abilities. And if you want to leave some feedback, give us some suggestions, give us a call at 612-367-6093. We'd love to hear from you. A big shout out to Chi Chow for his beautiful music. You can follow Chi Chow on Twitter at LChichow. And from all of us here at Blind Abilities, through these challenging times, stay well, stay informed, and stay strong. I want to thank you for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap between
the limited expectations
and the
reality
of blind abilities.
The realities of blind abilities.
Blind abilities.